Hello, I'm Ann Barnhardt, and I'm the person who says the things that everyone else is too terrified to say. This is my final video presentation. It is entitled, Remember Lot's Wife, Diabolical Narcissism, the Overarching Global Pathology. Now, a lot of you may be thinking, how exactly is it that I think that I am qualified to deliver a lecture on something that right off the bat sounds like psychology? The truth of the matter is that I have, and the reason that I have had the notoriety on the internet with the videos I have made is because I have the ability to acknowledge objective reality and not pretend that the truth is not the truth and not make excuses for things, but just to deal with objective reality. And this phenomenon of diabolical narcissism was put in front of me. I saw it for what it was, I dealt with it for the objective reality that it was, then began to research it very, very heavily, and came to this information, which is probably the most important information that I've ever come across. I believe that this is the most important video that I will have produced because it explains and it deals with everything that I've dealt with before. It's that important, and the stakes in terms of this information are so high because the stakes are literally human souls. The horrific truths that I've already dealt with in my internet video oeuvre, for many of you who may not know exactly who I am, I have videos on YouTube explaining the global economic and financial situation and that massive catastrophe. Islamic Sexuality, A Survey of Evil is one of my very, very popular video presentations that I've done. I did a presentation which basically dealt with the overthrow of the United States as comparing it to the French Revolution, specifically the Vendée genocide. And on my blog, I have covered extensively the mass apostasy that has been going on in the church. Now, how did I come by this information specifically? Let's just say I came by it the hard way, and we'll leave it at that. Why is this my final video presentation? This is my final video presentation because diabolical narcissism is the overarching dynamic that ties everything together. I can't imagine that after this, that there will be anything that won't be explainable by this video presentation. If someone comes to me and says, would you please do a video presentation explaining this dynamic that's going on in the world today, what I will almost certainly reply to them is, just go watch the Diabolical Narcissism video, and if you still have a question after that, which I doubt you will, come back and see me. This covers everything. I can't imagine there will be anything to say after this. Here are a list, and this is the short list of things that diabolical narcissism is the cause of. It is the cause of homosexuality and all aberosexuality. I've had people for years asking me, could you please write about the origins of homosexuality? People who have people in their family who are homosexual or aberosexual saying, I want to understand this. Can you please tell me where this is coming from? I did not have the vocabulary and sufficient information up until I encountered diabolical narcissism to be able to explain the roots of homosexuality and aberosexuality to my satisfaction. I now do, and there will be an entire module in this presentation on that topic. Diabolical narcissism is the cause of the destruction of proper aesthetics and the inversion of beauty and ugliness in the world. This is an aspect of diabolical narcissism that for me, when I came across this in my research, was absolutely jaw-dropping. And again, we'll have an entire module dedicated to that. It's fascinating. Diabolical narcissism is the cause of the psychopathic behavior we see rampant among politicians, the military, and the bureaucracy. It pretty much is the explanation of all macro psychopathic dynamics that we're seeing in the world today. Diabolical narcissism is the cause of psychopathic behavior rampant among the financial and corporate executive class. So going back to, my original nemesis, if you will, John Corzine and these financial executives, I understood immediately that these people were psychopaths, but you still can't fully understand is how is it that people can be so evil? How is it that people can be so callous? And diabolical narcissism explains all of it. Diabolical narcissism is the cause of the Musloid culture. Just a few minutes ago, while we were setting up to record this presentation, I was reading a piece that a woman had wrote in which she kept asking the question with regards to these rape gangs and so on and so forth. And, executing women who were raped, throwing people off the top of buildings, so on and so forth. And she kept asking the question, how can these people be so evil? How can these people do these things? If you don't understand diabolical narcissism, there's no satisfactory answer to that question. Diabolical narcissism explains it and explains it clearly. Diabolical narcissism is the cause of the social justice warrior mentality that we're seeing amongst young people and on college campuses. This insane, crazed, dogmatic demand that no one ever give anyone any offense, and the willingness at this point in the United States among these young people and on campuses to destroy people's lives. I mean, they have no problem doing that, financially destroying people, costing people their jobs. It will eventually, pretty soon, and some could argue that we've already crossed this line, that people are going to be imprisoned for offending someone or triggering someone, and it will eventually go, absolutely no doubt in my mind, that people will be executed under the jurisdiction of the state for offending other people. So diabolical narcissism is the root cause of all that. We will discuss that. Diabolical narcissism is the cause of the death of Christian culture and the near death of the church. Diabolical narcissism is what is behind the entire massive collapse in the church over the last 50 years. It is directly correlated to the aftermath of the Second Vatican Council and is also directly correlated to the abuse and the liturgical damage that has been done in that Novus Ordo paradigm in the church. Diabolical narcissism is the cause of countless souls being lost to hell. All day, every day, people are having their souls destroyed, they are losing their faith, they are being repelled from God, and they are being lost to hell because of diabolical narcissism. That's why I'm doing this presentation. Well, let's dive right in. What is diabolical narcissism? First of all, diabolical narcissism is my term. Now, other people who have been doing research out in the mainstream have been looking at narcissism and bringing up the idea that maybe there is some sort of a demonic influence, but that's overboten. You can't go there, especially if you're in the mainstream of the academy. You can't really discuss these things. And so, well, obviously I can. There's a little bit of work that's been done on this, and what diabolical narcissism is referred to mostly as right now, kind of the popular term, and if you want to Google and do your own research, the contemporary term is narcissistic personality disorder. I want to recoin that. I want to get this out into the conversation and introduce this term into the world. It's absolutely essential that you get that word diabolical in there so that you have a term within the term that specifically references the supernatural, okay? So narcissistic personality disorder, up until, NPD, that came into the lexicon 20, 30 years ago. Before that, it was referred to as megalomania. Yeah, he's a megalomaniac. That's what we're talking about here. This has been around for a very long, long time. It's just that right now it is absolutely exploding. Sociopaths and psychopaths, they are also diabolical narcissists. It's just that sociopathy and psychopathy are amplified versions of it. It's even more hardcore. Psychopaths are people who will commit enormous, atrocious crimes, mass theft, murder, crimes against humanity. So, a John Corzine who steals $1.6 billion. The Clintons who are mass murders, crimes against humanity. Bill Clinton is a serial rapist. Bill Cosby, for example, is a serial rapist. These people are psychopaths, actually committing these atrocious, atrocious crimes. But there are many, many people who are diabolical narcissists who don't commit crimes like that. They're much more subtle, much more serpentine in their attack, and they're going after people's souls. We're actually going to focus the most on that because those people are the people who are actually causing the most people to be lost to hell. The psychopaths are actually pretty easy to pick out. But we will talk in depth about the relationships that emerge between diabolical narcissists and sociopaths and psychopaths that they attach themselves to. It gets very interesting. A very excellent resource that I have to plug is a man on the internet named Sam Vaknin, V-A-K-N-I-N. He is an Israeli who freely admits that he has been fully diagnosed as having narcissistic personality disorder and is a low-grade psychopath. He was involved, I believe, in financial crimes, got caught, was sent to prison. That experience jarred him sufficiently that he sat down and he started writing about how his mind works, what he feels, the emotions he feels, and this stuff is credible. This has been vetted by outside people, and there's enough people out there saying, look, this guy isn't lying to us, even though mendacity is a key characteristic of diabolical narcissists. This guy is being straight in terms of this oeuvre that he has put together. It's extremely valuable. So like I said, he is credible. He has some significant blind spots, and we're going to go through each of those. But his website is samvak, S-A-M-V-A-K .tripod, TRIPOD.com. He has a massive written oeuvre. He has a YouTube channel, and if you like video, he reads short essays, short pieces on video. So he has an entire video oeuvre. It's an excellent, excellent resource. We will begin by discussing narcissism in terms of contemporary baseline psychology. Now, baseline mainstream psychology is massively flawed, and I personally don't recommend that anyone even engage it at this point. I think there's some psychiatry when people have actual legitimate chemical problems in their brains that medicine can address, but then, getting into the whole, and we will discuss this later, all of these antidepressants and so forth, that's quackery. But there is some legitimacy to medicine dealing with chemical processes in the brain. Put that over on the side. That's not what we're talking about. Let's talk about psychology. Psychology is massively flawed, but we'll start defining this in their terms just to get rolling. I'm going to lift from Vaknin here and use his definition of pathological narcissism. Quote, pathological narcissism is a lifelong pattern of traits and behaviors which signify infatuation and obsession with oneself to the exclusion of all others and the egotistic and ruthless pursuit of one's gratification, dominance, and ambition. Close quote. Fairly intuitive. I think a lot of us, if we were asked to define narcissism, would come up with something pretty close to that. The image of Narcissus staring at his own reflection, which is kind of the allegorical image of narcissism. And that is the root of the term, narcissus, staring at his reflection in a pool of water. Narcissist, it's very interesting. That's a very subtly correct image, because narcissists are not obsessed with their true selves, which they hate, okay? They loathe themselves, their true selves. They are instead obsessed with a false self, a false reflection, which is their own creation. For various and sundry reasons, self-loathing kicks in, and we'll discuss some of these dynamics in a minute. And so in their minds, they create a false fantasy self, and then their lifelong task is to project that false self onto the world and to almost soothe their own self-loathing by pretending that they are the false self. So here's the picture of Narcissus. This is a particularly beautiful painting, I think. And there he is staring into the pool of water at his reflection. And I want to make a point about Narcissus himself. Look at the real Narcissus. Look at his body. He's a beautiful boy. A lot of these people who are tricked into self-loathing by demonic oppression are gloriously beautiful people, just resplendently beautiful people. But once that self-loathing kicks in, it just all bets are off. And it doesn't matter how beautiful the true self is. If they hate the true self, then this false self emerges, and then just everything goes crazy. Now, there are two main species of pathological narcissists: somatic narcissist and cerebral narcissist. Somatic means body. So what we're talking about with somatic narcissists are people who are obsessed with their physical body, with their appearance, and also with sexual prowess. That all ties into somatic narcissism. That is actually what people think of most when they hear the word narcissism. Someone who, because it's the image of looking into a mirror, they're always thinking about someone who is obsessed with their body, their face, whatever. That's just half the story. The other category of narcissist is called a cerebral narcissist. This is a narcissist whose obsession and whose false self revolves not at all around his body, but around his intellect. Okay? And that is a completely different can of worms. First, somatic narcissist. They are obsessed with body and image, sexual performance. Many athletes and entertainers, as one would expect, are somatic narcissists. Many bodybuilders, not all, but many, and all homosexual bodybuilders. Every single homosexual bodybuilder, I can tell you right now, is a somatic narcissist. Fashionistas, people who are involved in the fashion industry and are their entire lives are completely wrapped up by clothing and so forth. The black culture today, what I call the rap hip-hop culture, complete somatic narcissism. It's somatic narcissism, but it's somatic narcissism just dumbed down. It's somatic narcissism for people whose IQs are in the 80s. And yes, you're darn right, I just said that. In fact, I'll say it again in case there was any confusion. The black hip-hop culture is a culture of somatic narcissism dumbed down, catering to people whose IQs are in the 80s. You may quote me on that. Please be sure to spell my name correctly if you do. That is the truth, and I have no fear of saying it. And I guess right now the most specific micro example of somatic narcissist is this phenomenon of these Kardashian people. These people are obviously diabolically evil somatic narcissists, and probably, in my opinion, the worst among them is the mother, a woman who has pimped out her own children, who has encouraged her own beautiful children to mutilate their bodies with, injections and plastic surgery in order to, inflate their backsides and things like this. people, a woman who has encouraged all of this truly despicable behavior and enabled all this in order to make hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars off of it. Kris Kardashian, in my opinion, is one of the most despicable human beings on the planet, and she is the quintessence of a diabolical somatic narcissist. Now, cerebral narcissism. Many of these people, not all of them, but many of them are actual bona fide geniuses. They are, in fact, brilliant, and some of them are even approaching, savant level type intelligence. They are not people, the type of savant that's like the retarded savant, as in the movie with Dustin Hoffman, Rain Man. Okay, that's not what we're talking about here. These people are extremely highly functioning, extremely charming when they want to be. You would never pick them out just instantaneously. You would just see them as being these resplendent intellects. Now, there are other cerebral narcissists who are obsessed with their intellects and who think that they're geniuses, but are not. An example that comes to mind right off the top of my head, Joe Biden. Joe Biden thinks that he is a super genius, and he is teetering on the precipice of mental retardation, but he honestly thinks that he's a genius. In my opinion, Jorge Bergoglio, Pope Francis, thinks that he is a super genius and gives every indication of being a dimwit. But a lot of the people in this cerebral narcissist class are, in fact, of above average intelligence, if not genius or borderline savant level intelligence. A dynamic that happens with cerebral narcissism in particular, and especially in terms of extremely intelligent children, is the deification of children. In doing my research about this, I heard an anecdote from someone that I was corresponding with that they have a cerebral narcissist in their family, and he was so intelligent as a child, he was so brilliant as a child that A, he was never behaviorally corrected, but B, the parents actually took to calling him, and I'm going to make up a name, let's say his name is George, actually took to calling him the Blessed George, and they weren't being tongue-in-cheek about it. This child was referred to as the Blessed George. If you have children that are of above average intelligence, it is absolutely essential that they are kept grounded and they are not deified and they are not told that they are in a separate category, superior and above everyone and everything else, even approaching saintliness or even being some sort of a demiurge. Do not do this. You will destroy an intelligent child. He will create a false self trying to live up to a standard that is impossible to meet, and then spend the rest of his life trying to project a false self, trying to justify this deification that he received as a child. Don't do this. We're going to talk more about the deification of children, because as you probably figured it out, isn't that exactly what we're doing to our children in schools right now? Aren't we just essentially taking all children and trying to deify them, trying to convince them that they are these precious little snowflakes, completely unique, who can do absolutely anything, and building up this completely false self-image that then crashes and burns and descends into this diabolical, malignant narcissism? Yes, we'll get to that later. Politicians tend to be cerebral narcissists, again, whether they're genuinely intelligent or not, and executives tend to be cerebral narcissists. They are recruited in this. The political class is recruiting these people. And if any of you are familiar with Mayuv, if you're familiar with what I call the Barnhardt axiom states that in today's world, the fact that a given person is holding or seeking to hold high-level office is proof in and of itself that that person is morally and or psychologically unfit to hold high-level public office. It's a feedback loop on itself. This is what we're talking about because these people are diabolical narcissists, and that is what is recruited, and that is what is sent up the chain. It's the same with executives, financial industry, just corporations in general. They recruit. John Corzine was specifically recruited by Goldman Sachs and sent straight to the top, not because he's an intelligent man. He's not bright. John Corzine went straight to the top of Goldman Sachs because he was a psychopath, and they knew it. And then he crashed and burned the whole thing, and he was disposable. They cut him loose with $600 million. We'll talk about that more later. Key traits. What are we looking for here? Number one, top of the list, that shows up in every single list that you see of traits of narcissists and is repeated even in Scripture, we'll see this later, is haughtiness. You come across a person, and what does haughtiness mean? Here's the definition. It's the appearance or quality of being arrogantly superior and disdainful. People who comport themselves nose in the air, looking down at other people like this, putting on airs of disdainful superiority. That is haughtiness. Psychologically normal people don't act like that. Period. Full stop. If you see a person today behaving like that, your red flag should go up. Nose in the air, sniffing, no. Something is terribly wrong. Be very, very, very careful. Here is Romans 1:30. Here's a scripture reference with the word haughty in it. They are detractors, hateful to God, contumelious, proud, and haughty. And contumelious means scornful or insulting. And actually what this verse is coming out of is a description of, you guessed it, homosexuals. Okay? Because these things are connected. Diabolical narcissism is the parent of homosexuality. So whenever you see in Scripture descriptions of the traits of aberosexual people, wicked sex perverts, that word haughty is almost always going to be there. Key traits, and this is another quote from Vaknin, quote, behaves arrogantly and haughtily, feels superior, omnipotent, omniscient, invincible, immune, above the law, rages when frustrated, contradicted, or confronted by people he or she considers inferior to him or her and unworthy. Very interesting about the invincible, immune, above the law. What does that remind you of? Does that not remind you of the political class? Does that not remind you of these extremely high-level corporate executives who are just getting away with anything? Exactly. This oligarchy at the very top, one of their defining characteristics is the fact that they deem themselves to be above the law, the rules do not apply to them, and that they are untouchable. Okay? This is all rooted in diabolical narcissism. A telltale sign: grovel and or pile on the charm to those above them and are abusive to those beneath them. And what I've written about before, one of the key things that I learned a long time ago is when you first meet somebody, one of the best ways to size them up is to see how they treat waitstaff. Because almost all of us eat in restaurants, right? We almost all have that experience. So it's a really good gauge that's easy to use. You meet someone for the first time, you go out to a restaurant, watch them. How do they treat the waitstaff? You can almost tell everything you need to know by that. I can tell you, I could kick myself over and over and over again, looking back in my life and seeing, being in situations where I really, the top one at the top of the list for me was my first job. And I was so happy, loved this job, went out to dinner, and the person that I was with was, completely engaging and charming with me. And then the waitress would come over. It was just hateful and contemptuous and disdainful and would even intentionally ignore the waitress. And I blew it off. I blew it off, and I regret it. I regret it every day. Diabolical narcissists will feel grandiose and self-important, exaggerates accomplishments, talents, skills, contacts, and personality traits to the point of lying, demands to be recognized as superior. That's another very important thing. People who, even if they are justifiably super talented, super great, when they start demanding that other people acknowledge this and show them obeisance and, you know, and that kind of thing, again, something's terribly, terribly wrong. Psychologically normal people do not do that. The narcissist is obsessed with fantasies of unlimited success, fame, fearsome power or omnipotence, unequaled brilliance in terms of cerebral narcissists, bodily beauty or sexual performance in terms of somatic narcissists. This is a quote from Vaknin. Firmly convinced that he or she is unique and being special can only be understood by or associate with other special or unique or high-status people or institutions. Haughty, snob, elitist. A great example, which I've written about recently, is the Legionaries of Christ. This is a criminal organization that exists inside the Catholic Church. It was founded by a drug addict, incestuous, bisexual, pedophile psychopath, purely to bilk rich people out of enormous amounts of money in order to feed his just absolutely diabolical lifestyle of fornication, homosexuality, pedophilia, to the point at the end he was actually raping his own sons. He was actually raping his own children. This entire Legionaries of Christ milieu was developed in order to appeal to people like this who wanted to be amongst an elite. They would go after millionaires, they would go after politicians, they would go after celebrities, etc., etc. And that's how the whole thing was marketed and continues to be marketed. It is a truly diabolical organization. Steer clear of it, because it is completely entrenched in this diabolical narcissism milieu. And I personally, in my research about them and hearing things and learning what I've learned, I suspect that at the general judgment, when all is revealed, that the Legionaries of Christ will in fact be revealed as one of the main loci of the actual practice of Satanism in the world. Diabolical narcissist requires excessive admiration, adulation, attention, and affirmation, or failing that, wishes to be feared and to be notorious. Thugs, mafiosi, doesn't that describe a mafia don or somebody who's running a de facto mafia? And in my opinion, this describes to a T Jorge Bergoglio, Pope Francis. Now I know the mainstream media and even the Catholic media won't report on all this. Jorge Bergoglio has thrown raging fits in the Casa Santa Marta, the place where he lives, which is also a dining hall, to the point where the Swiss guards had to clear the building because Bergoglio was raging. And specifically, the anecdote was when the 13 cardinals sent him the letter during the Synod Against the Family, saying, "This isn't right, will you please correct these things?" And he threw a raging, screaming fit. The man is a thug. He's running Rome and the Vatican like an absolute South American thug because he is a Peronist fascist. So, the narcissist feels entitled, demands automatic and full compliance with his or her unreasonable expectations for special and favorable priority treatment. One descriptor that you see frequently about these people is that they're spoiled, rotten brats. They're adults, but they're spoiled, rotten brats. Oligarchs, okay, demanding that special treatment. That is another quote from Vaknin. Here's a telltale sign, another one. Diabolical narcissists hate to help other people and will either refuse or will do it and make sure everyone involved knows how put out they are and what a massive condescension has been affected. This is a derivative of their inability to love, which we'll get to in a few minutes. Amusingly, when people stop asking diabolical narcissists for their help, because, you know, who wants to be put down and made to feel bad when you ask for somebody's help? The diabolical narcissist, when they stop getting asked for help, oh, they resent that too, and they complain bitterly about it. Well, nobody asked me, nobody ever asked me to do anything anymore. Well, I wonder why. In my own adult life, personal experience, I remember an incident where I had just executed a big event, and it was actually done kind of on behalf of somebody else, and turned out fantastic, tremendous success. I spent a lot of money on it. It was great. And so I'm cleaning up after this event, and I'm at the very, very end of the cleanup process, and there's just one piece of furniture that I needed to move. It was on wheels. It had things sitting on top of it, and I thought to myself, you know what? Don't be cute. Just go ask for help. Go ask for help moving this thing. Oh, and it had to go over a step. So I go in the other room, and I knock on the door, and I stick my head in, and I say exactly this. Hey, would you like to help me move that thing back inside? And the answer from this person, who was later revealed to be a diabolical narcissist, was, and I quote, "No, but I will anyway." You're welcome. It is interpersonally exploitative. The diabolical narcissist is interpersonally exploitative. That is, he uses others to achieve his or her own ends. A really good example of this is Michael Corleone, for those of you who are Godfather fans. The moment when Michael Corleone descends into diabolical narcissism and his descent into evil is the scene at the hospital when Vito Corleone is in the hospital and Enzo the baker comes with flowers to visit the Godfather, an innocent man, an act of charity, visiting someone who's sick in the hospital. And Michael Corleone enjoins this innocent man to go out front and stand and pretend to be a bodyguard, putting Enzo's life at grave, grave risk, a completely innocent man. That is the moment when Michael Corleone, who was before, you know, the apple of his father's eye, he was the best of the three sons, he was a war hero veteran, he's a genuinely intelligent and was a potentially very good man. That is the moment when he callously exploits and puts in grave danger the completely innocent man, Enzo the baker. There's examples of these dynamics all over literature, cinema, so on and so forth. You just have to be able to see it and recognize what the dynamic is. This is huge. Diabolical narcissists are almost completely devoid of empathy. They are devoid of empathy. Unable or unwilling to identify with, acknowledge, or accept the feelings, needs, preferences, priorities, and choices of others. They simply do not care. And you have to get this through your head, and it is for some people, it's impossible. It is impossible to get your head around how someone who presents at first as not only a normal person, but perhaps an extremely attractive person, a very charming person, to come to the realization that these people do not care about anyone else. They don't care about you. They don't care about how their actions affect you. They do not view you as even a sentient being. It's said that they view other human beings as three-dimensional cartoons. That's it. There for their amusement. And that's it. We as normal people, we can't comprehend this, but you have to get your head around it. They do not care. The narcissist relationships are self-serving and therefore shallow and superficial. The narcissist has no genuine interest in others and only feigns it when it serves his purposes. They can pile on the charm when they are sexually attracted to someone, when we're talking about some sort of a business or financial arrangement where, you know, they are gunning for financial benefit, closing a deal, getting a big tip, something like that. Oh, they can pile on the charm. It is completely superficial, completely superficial. Diabolical narcissists view other people not as human beings, but as 3D cartoons. Diabolical narcissists are especially attracted to Facebook and other social media platforms that reduce people even further from a three-dimensional cartoon in space. Now what Facebook does and these other social media platforms is it reduces their interaction with other people to 2 dimensions. They're even less real at that point. That is catnip to diabolical narcissists, okay? Diabolical narcissists are constantly envious of others, and they seek to hurt or destroy the objects of their frustration. They are wildly insecure and fragile, believe it or not. They can be, you know, extraordinarily aggressive coming at you, but inside, the true self is wildly insecure and fragile. A further list of diabolical narcissist traits from another very good website for reference, halcyon.com, Halcyon. This was assembled by a woman years ago who I believe has now passed away, but you know, people who used her website got together and are maintaining and making sure that the website is still up and the information is still out there. Very interesting reading. Other diabolical narcissist traits: they're conscienceless, they are shameless, they are authoritarian, they are contemptuous and disdainful, hypercritical, nothing nice to say about anyone or anything. Everything is framed in terms of criticism. It's not psychologically normal. They're cruel, they're callous, they're wanton. They can be, some of them are hyper flirtatious and seductive. I crossed paths with a female pathological narcissist. Ended up just by some random chance getting invited to a party where she was and observed this woman just crawling all over men in a positively serpentine comportment, slithering and sleazing up on men. And it later came out that this person is perhaps a sociopath or psychopath. And looking back at that and remembering that, it was the signs were all there. The telltale signs were all there. Hyper flirtatious, seductive comportment. Psychologically healthy, normal women don't act like that. More traits: hypersensitive, hypersensitive. In fact, will even concoct offenses where none is given. Fantasizing about being offended even. Incapable of self-deprecation. Beware of someone who never ever jokes about themselves. That's a telltale signal too. Very pessimistic, typically, in terms of the church and in terms of religions. You know, all religions outside of the church are false religions, but in terms of religion with a lowercase r, let's say, looking at liturgical fetishists, people like that's all a trait that goes with narcissism. Secretive, this is a derivative of grandiosity. They think that they are so important that, you know, oh, they have to keep all of everything secret and can't be open about anything because all of their affairs are of such enormous, desperate importance. Stinginess. Most of these diabolical narcissists are absolute tightwads. Again, not psychologically normal. Self-contradictory, hypocritical. We'll get into this ad nauseum later in the presentation. This is huge. They are inveterate, facile liars. They will look you in the eye and with the utmost earnestness lie through their teeth over and over and over again, shamelessly, shamelessly. They don't care. They absolutely don't care that they're lying to you, and the rules do not apply. But oh brother, if you or anyone else ever tells them a lie, they'll come down on you like a ton of bricks. But they will lie to your face with the utmost facility. This is very, very interesting. They tend to hate their own, which even still, I have a difficult time getting my head around this. But you look throughout history and you see it over and over and over again. Diabolical narcissists who hate their own people. Hitler, at the end, was just raging and raging against the German people for letting him down. Sadly, another great example of this right now in the church is Jorge Bergoglio, Pope Francis, who seems to be completely fine and even groveling to everyone except for Orthodox believing Catholics, for whom he has nothing but contempt. He's the perfect example of hating their own. Narcissists are masters of projection and gaslighting. Now, let's talk about what projection is. Projection is accusing others of having the character flaws and or committing the crimes that the diabolical narcissists are themselves committing. Does this sound familiar? Have you watched a political press conference lately? Have you noticed that all these politicians do is accuse other people of doing exactly the things that they're doing? That is projection. This is a key trait and tactic of diabolical narcissists. Gaslighting. I'm just quoting Wikipedia here because this is a very good and succinct description of what gaslighting is. Gaslighting is a form of mental abuse in which information is twisted or spun, selectively omitted to favor the abuser, or false information is presented with the intent of making victims doubt their own memory, perception, and sanity. Instances may range simply from the denial by an abuser that previous abusive incidents ever occurred, all the way up to the staging of bizarre events by the abuser with the intention of disorienting the victim. The genesis of the term is from a play that was then made into a movie, 1944, starring Ingrid Bergman, called Gaslight. The plot of this play is that there is a husband who is trying to drive his wife insane, presumably so that, I can't remember if he wants to institutionalize her and get rid of her, or if maybe he wants her to kill herself. I can't remember. I haven't seen the movie in a long time. But the key plot element in this movie is that he's doing things to change the level of the gaslight in the hall, in their home. And so, she notices that the gaslight is getting brighter and dimmer, depending on certain things that are going on in the house. And she points this out, and her husband keeps telling her, no, 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 you're crazy. There's also an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation in which Captain Picard is abducted by Cardassians and is tortured, and the method of torture is that there are, I can't remember the number, there are 4 lights up on the ceiling, and the torturer keeps wanting Picard to say that there are, I believe, 5 lights. All you have to do, Picard, is say that there are 5 lights. And you see, you're crazy. Of course there's 5 lights. Look, you're insane, you're crazy. And if he doesn't comply with this, he's beaten, and so on and so forth. This is also a form of gaslighting, trying to convince somebody that they are crazy. Gaslighting by totalitarian governments. Okay, we are going to be taking several citations from the 45 declared goals of the communist takeover of America, which was read into the congressional record on January 10th, 1963. These are items 38 and 39 from the 45 declared goals of communism. Number 38, transfer some of the powers of arrest from the police to social agencies. Treat all behavioral problems as psychiatric disorders which no one but psychiatrists can understand or treat. That's objective number 38. Objective number 39, dominate the psychiatric profession and use mental health laws as a means of gaining coercive control over those who oppose communist goals. This is going on right now as we speak in the United States of America. Legislation, well, not even legislation, what am I saying? Obama has just passed some, or just declared some executive edict that the FBI information, if somebody suspects, if someone accuses someone of being crazy or mentally ill, that information can be passed to the government and used in and of itself to, deprive people of the right to own firearms. And it's going to get to the point where people are going to be, as they were in the Soviet Union, people are going to be declared mentally unfit or insane simply for not conforming to the agenda of Washington, D.C., specifically being an Orthodox believing Christian. For example, calling Bruce Jenner a man. If you call Bruce Jenner a man, you are crazy. You are mentally unstable. You must be put away for the protection of society. This is a form of gaslighting. Now, it's interesting, when diabolical narcissists run up against a person of sufficiently strong character that is keenly attuned to reality and is thus not susceptible to accusations of insanity, the diabolical narcissist then drops into a second and final form of gaslighting, accusing the victim of being a bad person. Public character assassination may then follow. Another example, going back to the Legion of Christ criminal organization that is currently infecting the church. When the founder of this criminal organization, this racketeering organization, a man named Marcel Maciel, Mexican priest, when people, before he was exposed, were desperately trying to whistleblow about this criminal organization, what the Legion of Christ did is that they would send out toadies to declare these people were either crazy or bad people and would character assassinate them. This is what the Clintons do, okay? Paula Jones was characterized by the Clinton machine as being crazy and then characterized as being a gold digger. They did the same thing to Monica Lewinsky. Not that I'm defending Monica Lewinsky, but she was characterized as being crazy and or just a bad person by the Clinton machine itself. These are the tactics that these evil, diabolical people use in order to maintain control of situations. Outright character assassination. Diabolical narcissists know the difference between right and wrong. In fact, some of them write entire books about it. Don't ever forget that. They're not moral cripples. They know exactly what they're doing. They know what's right. They know what's wrong. They have no excuse. This description of diabolical narcissism is merely skeletal. In order to flesh out the corpus, one key concept must be added, which psychology lacks. Here we go. Here we go into punchline number one. We have to integrate the supernatural into this. You cannot have an intelligent discussion of any of these dynamics unless you acknowledge the supernatural, unless you discuss these concepts vis-a-vis the supernatural. So if you're sitting there right now rolling your eyes and saying, oh, she's jumping the shark now, well, that's your decision. You can turn it off right now. But I'm telling you that if you are going to disqualify the supernatural in all this, you have no hope. I mean, this is like trying to do mathematics without the zero. Good luck with that. Psychology, quote unquote, denies the supernatural, the soul, the notion of sin, especially original sin. Psychology is concerned with excuses that explain away evil. Remember, if a person has a genuine excuse for some action, there is no sin, because an excuse by definition is a dispensation from moral culpability. Modern psychology is completely concerned with generating an excuse for every single act of evil in the world. That's what it is. That's why it's so monstrously flawed. And you know, we've all been trained to do this, including myself. We've all been trained to make excuses for every sin and malefaction. An exercise. Let's go through this together. Make psychological excuses for the following diabolical narcissist psychopaths. I can do this in my sleep. We all can. Okay, Napoleon. Napoleon, he was short. He was short, and when he stood next to tall guys, he felt really insecure and bad about himself. So then he turned into a crazed dictator who felt the need to kill hundreds of thousands of his own men by invading Russia in the winter. But we can all do it. Oh, it's not his fault. He was short. He was insecure. That's a clear example. Hitler. Ooh, this one's really easy to do. Hitler. Okay, father was a drunken psychopath who beat him and his mother, so he becomes inordinately attached to his mother, and then starts somehow being sexually abused. We know this because he was arrested working as a boy prostitute at age 14, working in the gay ghetto of Vienna. So, yeah, there you go. That explains everything, doesn't it? That justifies all of his crimes. No, he was he was an evil person. He was an evil, bad things certainly happened to him, but that does not mean that you have an excuse to do anything. You're not dispensed from the notion of sin, but psychology says you are. Oh, look at that piece of crap. Ted Kennedy. Ted Kennedy, how do we justify this rapist murderer? Okay, his daddy, Joe Kennedy Sr., was a complete psychopath criminal. His mother was probably also a sociopath because she just totally enabled and put up with all of this goings on. He felt insecure because his three older brothers were kind of big studs that the father expected them all to be president of the United States. Joe Jr. was killed as a war hero in World War II. Of course, Jack Kennedy was also a war hero, and then comes back and is a United States senator and becomes president of the United States and is assassinated. And then Bobby Kennedy, smart guy, attorney general, et cetera, and Teddy, who's not very bright, felt insecure next to his brothers, and he was raised by his father and his older brothers to be an absolute whoremonger. Does that dispense him from the fact that he murdered Mary Jo Kopechne? Murderer. Nope, sure doesn't. He's a bad man. He's a bad man. Born with a silver spoon in his mouth, had every opportunity, chose it. He chose it and he was responsible for it. Finally, this is really easy to do. Barack Obama. All right, let's see. His mother's a whore. His mother hops from bed to bed with the frequency of a cheap ham radio, gets knocked up by a black guy. We're still not exactly sure who. So she births him, and then whoever the father is gone, wants nothing to do with him. The mother then marries an Indonesian communist Muslim. Oh, and by the way, the maternal grandparents are communists. Okay. So the mother marries an Indonesian communist Muslim. So now that's a stepfather. He's taken to Indonesia. He's put into a Muslim madrasa, and they hire a male to female transvestite, a drag queen, to be his nanny. So he's probably sexually abused at the Muslim madrasa school because, that's just the way it is. And he's probably being abused in some way by this aberosexual pervert who is hired as his nanny. The mother has another child, a daughter, with the Indonesian. A few years later, The mother decides that she really doesn't want to have Barry around anymore, so she takes him back to Hawaii, dumps him on the communist grandparents. They don't really want him. What they do is then they dump him off to be mentored on a black man who is a high-up operative in the Communist Party and who is a bisexual pornographer. His name is Frank Marshall Davis, who may or may not have been his father, and there's also pretty compelling evidence that Frank Marshall Davis probably sexually abused Barack Obama too. So by the time Barack Obama goes to college, he is a hard drug-using sodomite. Does that excuse or dispense Barack Obama from the crimes against humanity that he has committed, that have been committed in his name? Nope, sure doesn't. Sorry you had a suboptimal childhood. Lots and lots of people do. This is not an excuse, carte blanche, to commit any and all manner of sin. It simply is not. Psychology has conditioned us to believe that there is no such thing as sin, evil, and especially wicked or evil people. Let me just ask you a question. Is there any such thing as a bad person? Well, a few years ago, any sane person would say instantaneously, obviously, yes, there are lots of bad people. There are lots of really bad people. Do you realize that our culture is so far gone? We are not allowed to say this anymore. We are not allowed to say that there is any such thing as a bad person, no matter what they do. Unless we acknowledge the supernatural, specifically the existential reality of Satan, demons, and hell, and their interaction with this world, which is massive, there can be no real understanding of diabolical narcissism. Diabolical narcissist, this is the definition. This is the pinnacle. This is what this entire presentation is revolving around, so pay close attention. Diabolical narcissists are human beings that have, by their own free will, chosen to purge themselves of all love, and another word for love is charity, which is used very often in Scripture, and thus all positive emotions derived from love. When a human being, for whatever reason, decides, I am not going to love. Is it a defense mechanism? For most of them, probably yes. It doesn't matter. They decide, I am not going to love. And they begin this process, and it can happen very quickly, of purging all love out of their heart. Incapable of love. Think about that. Incapable of love. And then incapable of all of the emotions that are derived from love. Happiness, joy, pleasure, gratitude, even sadness, mourning. These people are incapable of this. In purging themselves of all charity, they become incapable of love. Because they are incapable of love, the only emotions that they feel with depth are the big four: anger, hatred, jealousy or envy, and fear. This is what I will refer to for the rest of the lecture as the demonic emotional palette. This is exactly what demons are. They are fallen angels, purged of love. They only experience anger, hatred, jealousy, and fear. That is the demonic emotional palette. That is what diabolical narcissists are. It's human beings who have assumed a diabolical, psycho-spiritual posture and emotional palette. That's what diabolical narcissists are. What this means is these human beings have freely chosen to adopt the psycho-spiritual posture and emotional palette of demons. Satan, knowing that Christ would incarnate as a man, pridefully, or we could say haughtily, refused to adore God because angels are massive intellects, and compared to angels, human beings would be like ants. It would be like if someone said, God is incarnated as an ant, bow down and worship an ant. Well, the fact of the matter is that if God did, hypothetically, he has not, I'm making a hypothetical point here, if God did incarnate as an ant, then God is God. Now, a third of the angels led by Satan or Lucifer means light, we'll move into that more, they said, no, we will not serve. We will not adore a man, even if that man is God incarnate. We will not serve. We will not do it. Pride, haughtiness, we are above that. 1/3 of the angels followed Lucifer and were cast out, never to see God, never to attain the beatific vision. They did not make this choice after seeing God. They were just given this enormous swath of information, given an enormous amount of information, and chose, before ever seeing the beatific vision, to reject God. And now they will never achieve the beatific vision. And that is the root of their rage and their anger, and why they are incapable of love. Lucifer and the demons, their fate sealed, purged of all love, are only capable of anger, hatred, jealousy, and fear, and thus want to drive as many humans into hell as they can, never to see God like them, like the fallen angels. And why? It's an extremely important concept. The reason why is spite, pure spite. Again, for psychologically normal people, you have to sit and think about this for a while, to think about how your entire existence could be driven by nothing more than spite. That's what they are. Interestingly, I was reading not long ago about exorcists and exorcism, obviously, and I came across an anecdote that was conveyed by an exorcist in which a person had been liberated of an actual demonic possession, which are quite rare, but they happen. And the very last thing that the demon did to manifest was he scrawled the word spite into the wall. And then he was gone. But that was the last thing that it did. Spite. That is what they are, just spiteful beings. Satan and the demons hate all humans because they exist, because they are capable of love, and they have the potential, they are capable of achieving the beatific vision because of the redemptive and salvific work of Christ on Calvary. Diabolical narcissists are direct analogs to demons. Let me say it again. Diabolical narcissists are direct analogs to demons and should be thought of as mercenaries of hell, looking to crush and even kill the souls of other human beings out of pure spite. Diabolical narcissists, like demons, are consumed with anger because deep down they know how empty and deficient they are. They know they're incapable of love, and they know what a deficiency that is, in exactly the same way that the demons do. The demons know what they are. That's why they're so damn angry. Diabolical narcissists are consumed with hatred of others who do not share their miserable nature, that they deem to be beneath them, or that fail to supply them with diabolical satisfaction. Now, that's an interesting term, diabolical satisfaction. Understand, these people are not capable of satisfaction or pleasure in the way that normal people are. They will never be satisfied, and they can't experience pleasure. Diabolical satisfaction is, if you ever get fuzzy on these concepts, just think about a demon. Just actually think about a demon. When a demon oppresses a person and causes, in whatever way, a person to make terrible choices and commit sins, the demon in that moment experiences a diabolical satisfaction. But it's never satiated. There's never enough. They will go on and on and on like this until forever. It's all eternity. Diabolical narcissists are consumed with envy of people who are capable of love and normal human affection. How sad is that? They see people who are loving, who are manifesting love, and it enrages them. It enrages them. Diabolical narcissists are consumed with fear that the reality of their true selves, which they loathe, and their false selves, which they are desperate to maintain, will be exposed. Diabolical narcissists are incapable of love, genuine happiness, joy, pleasure, gratitude, empathy, compassion, or sadness. As such, they despise or discredit those affectations in other people. So when someone else manifests this, the diabolical narcissist will accuse them of being manipulative, of playing at something, playing at some sort of a gambit, trying to get something out of them, emotionally blackmailing them, etc., etc. Diabolical narcissists will accuse their battered and bloodied victims of being needy, insecure, self-absorbed, manipulative, emotional blackmailers because they refuse to believe or accept that other people have genuine emotions and especially are capable of being hurt. If I speak with the tongues of men, this is 1 Corinthians 13. This is read at most weddings these days. Listen to this, because this is addressing this directly. This is hard for me. If I speak with the tongues of men and of angels and have not charity, love, I am become a sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal. And if I should have prophecy and should know all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I should have all faith so that I could remove mountains and have not charity, I am nothing. Nihil sum. That is the word of God. That is the word of God to man, saying, if you cannot love, God saying this, who knit you together in your mother's womb, if you have chosen to purge yourself of love, doesn't matter if you're a polyglot, it doesn't matter if you have an encyclopedic mind, it doesn't matter if you have faith, all faith, so that you could remove mountains. If you cannot love, you are nothing in the eyes of God. That is terrifying. That is terrifying. Diabolical narcissists are consumed with hatred and envy, most especially for normal, loving, happy, grateful, empathetic people. We've already gone over this. They derive diabolical satisfaction from attacking, scandalizing, and even killing other people, either spiritually or in some cases, which are rare but exist. There are people who hunt other human beings, driving them to suicide. Tap a notch in their belt if they can get another human being to commit suicide. But really, the spiritual death, it's the same thing, okay? Get another person to die spiritually. Diabolical narcissists identify targets, groom them, and then devalue them, turning on them, making them objects of their cruelty to generate diabolical satisfaction. And again, reiterating, they know exactly what they're doing, and they are not sorry for it. If they make any apology, it is simply for the purpose of bringing the victim back so that the victim can be victimized again, even harder the next time. Scandal, in my opinion, one of the most overlooked sins today. Scandal is, quote, any action or its omission, not necessarily sinful in itself, that is likely to induce another to do something morally wrong. Direct scandal, also called diabolical, has the deliberate intention to induce another to sin. In indirect scandal, a person does something that he or she foresees will at least perhaps lead another to commit sin, but this is rather tolerated than positively desired. The etymology for the word scandal is the Latin scandalum, meaning stumbling block. Trying to entice someone to commit a sin, or committing a sin and just really not caring that it could cause other people to commit a sin, and not necessarily the same sin. What about committing a sin that just causes someone else to lose their faith? What about all these crimes by all of these priests, these scandals that come out? I get emails about this every time there's a new priest scandal. I get sent links to some news story and, oh, this and such priest has been, living a false double life for all these years. And I get inundated with emails from people saying, this is why I will never enter the Catholic Church. This hypocrisy, this scandal. This is why I left the Catholic Church and will never return. There is no salvation outside of the Catholic Church. The stakes here are enormous, but these people do not care. That is a species of scandal. Diabolical narcissists often drive people to despair, to lose their faith if they had faith before, and even descend into diabolical narcissism themselves. It's contagious. If you are victimized by a diabolical narcissist and you do not have the capacity to understand what's going on, it is very common that the victim then descends into diabolical narcissism. Diabolical narcissism is contagious and vampiric. Scandal is the transmission vector. In general, the happiest, most openly loving and affectionate people are who? Think about it. Who is, as a class, who is the most joyful, happy, ebullient, openly loving, affectionate class of human beings? Yeah, it's children. It is children. Which is why parents should move heaven and earth to make certain that their children are not exposed to diabolical narcissists. And if you have one in your family, I'm really sorry. But the well-being of your children is more important. Diabolical narcissists are not possessed. They are not possessed by the devil. That is a completely different thing. Demonic possession is very, very rare. And the reason why it's rare is that it's not especially effective. If anything, it has effects on the other side. For example, again, reading as I was about exorcism, there's a classic example of a priest who got involved with exorcism ministry, but his faith was flagging. And so he goes to one of the very first and probably the most severe actual demonic possession that he had ever been to. And, he's kind of, I don't know what to expect here. It's probably just going to be a run-of-the-mill crazy person. It turned out that it was a 7-year-old inner-city black child, okay? 7-year-old inner-city black child. Now, a 17-year-old inner-city black teen is probably functionally illiterate. A 7-year-old inner-city black child may not even be able to yet have full capacity of language, okay? That's what we're talking about here. So he walks in, and, there's a lead priest there, but they start engaging this, and the demon manifests, and this 7-year-old inner-city black child turns to this priest and starts correcting his Latin grammar. Faith. In that moment, that priest knew it's all true. It's all true. That's demonic. That's supernatural. That is from hell. Therefore, there is a God. Therefore, all of this is true. It's all true. That's oftentimes what comes out of demonic possessions. That's why Satan just doesn't go around possessing everybody. Far, far more effective to have human mercenaries who voluntarily take on the traits of demons and then go out into the world and do it for them. So let me put it to you this way as a thought exercise. Just hypothetically, what if an actual demon, okay, hoofs, just horrific, a demon manifested right in front of you and started saying, I hate you. Look at you. I hate you. I can't stand you. Said hurling obscenities at you. F you, I hate you. Well, you look at it and you're like, well, yeah, you're a demon. Of course you hate me. What else would you do? Would you be offended by the fact that a demon was standing there telling you that he hated you? Would your heart be broken? Would your heart be broken if a demon manifested in front of you and started telling you how much it hated you? No, of course not. What will break your heart? How about when a parent, member of the family, child, friend, co-worker, human being, turns on you, says, I hate you, look at you, F you. That'll break your heart. That'll break your heart. That'll do some damage, especially if you're not aware of any of this. Like, what is happening? What just happened here? That is how the enemy works. That's why this is so important. Diabolical narcissists need not believe in God. Satan doesn't care. He doesn't have to believe in the existence of Satan, demons, hell, anything supernatural. Doesn't have to have any notion that his actions are a vector of hell that is being, that the premise behind it is getting other people to lose their soul. Nope. Most of them don't. There's relatively few, I would think, who probably even believe that there is such a thing as Satan or demons. Relatively few. This phenomenon is global. It's worldwide. It's everywhere. Satan doesn't care. All he cares about is getting as many people to hell as he can, keeping them out of the beatific vision. Doesn't matter. So don't get caught up in that trap that these people are all thinking about being diabolical and I'm going to be like a demon and this is all very satanic. The vast majority of them, that thought process is never even occurring to them, but it doesn't matter. Okay, 3 things that make a person a target for diabolical narcissist rage. Number 1, so in your own life and dealing people, or maybe with looking back at your life and saying, oh, that's what happened. That's what happened. Okay, rule number 1 when dealing with a diabolical narcissist. You never tell a diabolical narcissist that you love them. Why? First, they hate and disdain you for it because they're incapable of love. And they're self-loathing, so if you say that you love them, they think you must be absolutely insane to love something like them. That's that whole self-loathing dynamic. And at that moment, they begin targeting you because they know they can hurt you. You've just told them what saying I love you to someone is essentially doing is making yourself vulnerable to them and saying, here I am, here's my heart in your hands, you can hurt me. Number 2, never tell a diabolical narcissist what makes you happy or what you are grateful for, because they will take it as their sacred diabolical mission to take your happiness away from you. Are you looking back at your life and saying, oh my gosh, that totally happened to me? Yeah, this has happened to countless millions of people. Number 3, never tell a diabolical narcissist that they have hurt you. Not only do they know they're hurting you, they've been planning it, they've been fantasizing about it, they will do it again. If you say to them, you hurt me, they say, oh, good, it worked, I'm going to do it again. And they will do it harder the next time in order to hurt you more and to prove that they can, to prove that they're above the law, to prove that they can get away with it. And again, keep saying this over and over again, they are not sorry. If they apologize to you, it is solely for the purpose that they want to bring you back so that they can do it to you again and do it to you harder and derive more of this diabolical rush that they get from it. Diabolical narcissists often derive far more diabolic satisfaction from the getting away with it than the actual attack or crime itself. Because they are so often charming and or powerful people, their coterie or subordinates will never confront them for fear of being the next to come under attack. Think about, the Clintons, think about these politicians, think about these people who are committing these crimes. Capital crimes, crimes against humanity, crimes against peace, day in and day out, and just keep getting away with it. That's the rush. That's the rush. Think about Bill Cosby. They all knew that he was raping those women. He was raping those women in his dressing room on the set of The Cosby Show. Everyone knew what was going on. They would see these women just, looped on drugs, staggering out of his dressing room, and all of those people, the production crew, all of the other celebrities who starred in that show, those people saw it, they knew what was going on, and they said nothing. And that was probably the most intense part of the rush for Cosby and people like them. This is classic oligarch behavior. Misbehaving openly in public and then sitting back and getting away with it when nobody ever confronts them about it, because they're just too charming, and we sure like having them at table. Bottom line, I'll ask the question again, is there any such thing as a wicked, evil person? If diabolical narcissism does not constitute wickedness or evilness in man, what does? Nothing. If this isn't the definition of a bad person, then there is no bad person. Scripture is replete. Do a search online. Scripture is replete with references to bad, evil, wicked people. Come on. This entire civilization has been brainwashed in a matter of just a couple of decades. Wake up. All right, let's talk about homosexuality. Homosexuality and all forms of sexual perversion or aberrosexuality are caused by diabolical narcissism in various degrees. All acts of sodomy are rooted in anger and or envy. Let me say that again. All acts of sodomy are rooted in anger and or envy. So 2 of the demonic palette of 4, anger, hatred, jealousy, fear, anger and envy here. There is no such thing as a loving act of sodomy. The further a person descends into diabolical narcissism, the more perverse their sexuality becomes. Look at Charlie Sheen. Look at Charlie Sheen's descent, where, that guy wasn't gay. He just descended into a diabolical narcissism so intense that he could no longer derive sexual pleasure merely from, porn stars, girls. He had to start going into male to female drag queen transvestites, and then he went into just having sex with men, qua men. That's how he got AIDS. All of us, every human being, if they descend into diabolical narcissism, every single person is capable of descending into intense sexual perversion. I know that's an extremely challenging and bold thing to say, but it's true. The more you purge love out of your soul, and the more your mind is completely operating on anger, hatred, jealousy, and fear, the more sexually perverted you become. And it starts with acts of heterosexual fornication that are clearly not rooted in love because it's fornication, but are driven mostly by anger as the primary driver. Male homosexuality, men who were abused as children, their primary driver is anger. Many men who were themselves abused as children predate children and teens out of spite and a desire to vampirically destroy the souls of others. The fastest way to make a child into a diabolical narcissist is sexual abuse. Fastest way to create a diabolical narcissist. Get them as a kid and sexually abuse them. They will shut down. They will purge all love from their souls, even as prepubescent children, and that'll be the end of it. Most Musloid men are diabolical narcissists and homosexual pedophiles because man-on-boy pedophilia is just endemic to the Musloid culture. Absolutely endemic. If you haven't seen my Islamic Sexuality, A Survey of Evil video, watch it. Look it up on YouTube. Barnhardt, Islamic Sexuality. It'll come right up. Watch it. They're all pedophiles. And why is that a demonic priority? Destroy the souls of the children immediately. So you raise the next gen. There's constant flow of these new diabolical narcissists. And it spreads, and it spreads, and it spreads. Male homosexuality, somatic narcissist, you know, the buff gay gym guys. They're driven by anger and envy. Hatred of women as inferior, that's among the butch men, or trying to acquire by sexual congress the traits of other men to compensate for their perceived physical flaws or deficiencies. It's more common among the effete men. Male homosexuality in terms of cerebral or inverted narcissists, that's kind of another term for a cerebral narcissist. Their sexual perversion is driven by envy and anger, self-loathing, wanting to be someone else. Envy morphs into a perverse eroticism. Cerebral narcissists often, this is interesting, cerebral narcissists will often cycle between long phases of near asexuality and active homosexuality. So they'll go for a long period of time without acting out, and then they'll fall back, and then they might come back out of it again and just live as asexuals. Quite common among the cerebral narcissist set. Female homosexuality, completely driven by anger. Butch lesbians are driven by a hatred of men. Vampirism, many of the butch lesbians were abused by other butch lesbians like basketball coach, volleyball coach. It's very common. Chastity Bono is a great example of this. Chastity Bono started being raped by her nanny when she was, I think, 9 years old. And so it's all a very vampiric dynamic. Lipstick lesbians, feminine lesbians, they are driven by hatred of men. Most of them were abused by men as children, the mother's boyfriend, the stepfather. And if you look at the surveys and the research that's been done, the vast majority of strippers and porn stars were abused as young girls, many of them by the mother's boyfriends or the mother's husband. Transvestitism, pure somatic narcissism driven by anger, violent anger towards one's own body to the point of mutilation. The narcissistic false image taken to the extreme. Bruce Jenner, pure somatic narcissist. And, you know, it's interesting, since this has all happened and come out, he has 3 sets of children. He has a set of children that were born, in fact, before the 76 Olympics, who are now in their 40s. And they've come out and said, he was a horrific, terrible father. Abandoning us, completely non-empathetic, completely absent, horrible father. Well, yeah, it's because he's a somatic narcissist. And this perversion has increased and metastasized to the point where the guy is now getting ready to literally chop his genitals off for public show. It's incredibly sad. Heterosexuality, all sexual activity outside of marriage in the proper physical manner, bodily position, and open to the transmission of life, is disordered and rooted in anger, hatred, envy, or fear in some way. Sadly, conjugal acts genuinely rooted in love are becoming exceedingly rare, even among people who are married, because most people today contracept. Contraception says, I hate and fear your fertility. I hate and fear that aspect of your person, your fertility. And so there's even in that, even in married heterosexual sex, if it is contracepted, if it is not open to the transmission of life, then there is that seed of hatred and fear there, even in that. Because all of aberosexuality is rooted in diabolical narcissism, only normal heterosexual men and women should be permitted to religious life. Only normal heterosexual men and women. No asexuality, none of that. You've got to be straight. You've got to be normal. Priest, monk, you like girls? The answer to that should be yes. I am heterosexual. This notion that these people are somehow asexual, it's completely wrong. The only normal psychological comportment, psychospiritual comportment, is heterosexuality. Even if a homosexual man is chaste, that is completely celibate, never, let's say you've got a man with same-sex attractions who has never engaged in any sex act with another person and has never even masturbated, never even abused himself. If he still is homosexually oriented, if he still lusts after men of the same gender, obviously, then there is something wrong there. It's rooted in diabolical narcissism. It's pointing to diabolical narcissism, which is the overarching reality and concern. Because his perverted attractions are a derivative of diabolical narcissism, he must never, ever be allowed anywhere near the priesthood, ever. Ever. Think about it. Priesthood, offering the holy sacrifice, hearing confessions, care of souls, diabolical narcissist. Nope, absolutely not. Diabolical narcissists are weapons of mass spiritual destruction. This is why homosexuals have been aggressively recruited into the church. Most of the nuns now are lesbians. Well, let's just lay our cards on the table. And the percentage of priests that are either gay or gay friendly or gay positive, as they say, it's beyond alarming. And they were recruited and placed there on purpose, and look at the destruction. In 50 years, 90%, if you want to use the word apostasy at this point, you probably could, in the West. Remember, diabolical narcissism is when a human being freely chooses to purge all love from their soul. Diabolical narcissists are incapable of love. They are only capable of the demonic emotional palette of anger, hatred, jealousy, and fear. Diabolical narcissists are not only unqualified, but extremely dangerous to souls. You think I'm mean? You think I enjoy this, that I'm enjoying the horror of this situation, that I would enjoy saying, you are completely it's horrible. It's horrible. But it is objective reality, and it must be faced, and it must be discussed openly. And we have to do something about it too, not just talk about it. Telltale sign with priests. Diabolical narcissist priests resent being asked to hear confessions and often refuse. Sure sign of a good priest is love of the confessional. I had an opportunity to visit on the phone not too terribly long ago with an excellent, excellent young priest. And we were talking about confession and the importance that confession be available. And he said to me, hearing confessions is the joy of my life. He looks forward to it every single day. Looks forward to going and sitting in the box, even if nobody comes, even if nobody comes. It's something is terribly, terribly wrong with a priest who refuses to hear confessions. Macro-societal dynamics driven by diabolical narcissism. First and foremost, oligarchy. Oligarchs are people who think that they are above everyone else. It's a very demonic mindset. Superiority, otherness, elitism. The rules do not apply to them. I'm going to start using the term alpha and beta. Alpha diabolical narcissist above, with beta diabolical narcissist as a massive supporting bureaucracy. This is a very important concept. What we see is there's actually two operational levels of diabolical narcissist. The alpha level is much, much smaller, and those narcissists tend to be your sociopaths and your psychopaths. They're very aggressive, and they're usually very powerful people. What is below them is a massive case of what I call beta diabolical narcissist. That is the kind of narcissist who wants to attach to someone or something above them and follow them. We'll talk about this much, much more. So it isn't just the fact that you've got this few number of oligarchs. It's also this bureaucracy that's under them. The bureaucracy is made up almost entirely of diabolical narcissists too. That's why I say the problem with the United States isn't a matter of, repopulating the Congress or getting somebody else in the way. I mean, it's so over, and it's so over because you're going to have to completely clear out the bureaucracy too, which is massive. And that's all populated with diabolical narcissists, and they're not going to go without a fight. Prevalence of diabolical narcissism is inversely correlated to subsidiarity and the rule of law. The more a society is populated with diabolical narcissists, the more totalitarian the structure becomes. So there's a positive correlation between totalitarianism and diabolical narcissism. There's an inverse correlation to subsidiarity, meaning power that evanesces as you go up. So the most power is at the local level, and then power evanesces as you go up toward the more overarching. Obviously, oligarchs have no interest in that. They want exactly the opposite. The bureaucracy. Diabolical narcissists very often attach themselves to a sociopath or psychopath alpha to whom they display loyalty and will brook no criticism. Diabolical narcissists admire sociopathy. They admire people who are aggressively devoid of empathy and shame and are loveless. In terms of this, we're looking at people like government staffers, mafia or gang members. That's what this dynamic is. Political fanboys, people who just blindly attach themselves to politicians, and then no matter what happens, they continue to be loyal, even when the politician is revealed to be completely disingenuous and oily. Celebrity entourages, the people who are trailing along behind Justin Bieber and people like that, the people trailing along behind Bieber are probably all diabolical narcissists because they really like celebrity. High-level corporate staff, the people who are working for John Corzine. What kind of a person do you have to be to want to work for John Corzine? So all the people surrounding him at MF Global, those are probably all bureaucratic beta level diabolical narcissists. Religious cults, obviously. You've got a psychopath at the top and then a bureaucracy below of enforcer support staff bureaucracy, and they're all diabolical narcissists. And careerists in the church, obviously. Chasing status, chasing celebrity, attaching themselves, brooking no criticism of even the most corrupt people above them. We're seeing that right now, obviously, with Jorge Bergoglio, Pope Francis. People just groveling around behind him. Those are probably diabolical narcissists. The dynamic of the hag-fag. Diabolical narcissist homosexual men will frequently attach themselves to a sociopathic woman. So the sociopathic woman is the alpha, and then the homosexual man is the beta diabolical narcissist. Examples of this, female celebrities. When I first became aware of this entire dynamic was actually when I was a kid, and I would watch A&E's biography. And anytime they would do a biography about one of these old-time Hollywood female celebrities, the main source of information being interviewed would be an extremely well-dressed gay man who was her life friend, dear, close, personal friend. He was a hag-fag, okay? So this dynamic also frequently emerges with rich, powerful, socially or politically connected women. Alpha level with a homosexual man trailing along behind them. The man, the homosexual man, is looking for long-term financial benefits. He's perhaps looking for career advancement. He's certainly looking for social status. And he may even, although this is less common today, but up until not too long ago, he may have been looking for a beard cover, you know, wanting to perhaps put forth the idea that maybe he was sexually involved with this woman in order to, you know, cover his homosexuality in public or to his family or whatever. The woman is looking for a quote-unquote human pet or a stable male presence in light of her own promiscuity, a de facto personal assistant, perhaps a fashion consultant, you know, since it's a gay man, and maybe even sometimes a manny, a guy who will take care of her kids. Let's talk about aesthetics. This is fascinating. Have you ever said, hey, why is everything so damn ugly these days? Well, it all has to do with diabolical narcissism. Back to the declared goals of communism. Number 22 from the list of 45. Continue discrediting American culture by degrading all forms of artistic expression. An American communist cell was told to, quote, eliminate all good sculpture from parks and buildings, substitute shapeless, awkward, and meaningless forms. Number 23 from the list of 45 goals of communism. Control art critics and directors of art museums. Quote, our plan is to promote ugliness, repulsive, and meaningless art. Being incapable, this is so interesting, being incapable of genuine happiness or pleasure, diabolical narcissists have no taste. I'm not saying they have bad taste. I'm saying exactly what I said. They have no taste. They don't even know what they like. They have to be told by someone else what they like, because think about it. If you are incapable of pleasure, if you're incapable of happiness, right? All you're capable of is anger, hatred, jealousy, and fear. How do you know what you like and what you don't like? You have to be told by someone else. And so, almost always what happens is they have an alpha attachment above them, or someone that they are sexually attracted to. They'll also take cues from that. And they are then told what they like. Then what they do is they adopt that as dogma and defend it with just the utmost viciousness, complete viciousness. They can't justify it. They don't know why they like the things they like, or they have the aesthetic that they have, but they will defend it viciously as dogma. Here's an example. This is an award-winning stained glass window that was actually installed in a church in Denver. And oh, a big hubbub was made about these amazing stained glass windows, and look at these things, and these things are supposed to be apparently representing the different choirs of angels. And we look at this, and it is ugly. In fact, if we go back, it is exactly this. It is shapeless, awkward, meaningless form. It's jagged, it's rough, it has no symmetry, it's not representing anything, it's completely random. The jaggedness especially is what bothers me. You look at it and ooh, it's gonna cut me or something. It's like shards of glass or something like that. This is award-winning. People running around saying, oh, this is the most beautiful thing. No, it's not. It's horrifically ugly. What the hell's the matter with you? If you want to have stained glass windows of angels, why don't you have, I don't know, call me crazy, maybe stained glass windows that depict angels and not random, meaningless, shapeless, ugly forms like this? Why are these people running around and saying that this ugliness is beauty? It's because they have been told by alphas above them, going all the way back into the middle of the 20th century, people who were planted and specifically tasked with destroying the aesthetic sense of the culture. Tell this diabolical narcissist beta class that ugliness is beautiful. They will then spread this dogmatically and defend this aesthetic viciously. It's exactly what's happened. This is another award. This is a church. This is award-winning church architecture. It's hideous. It's absolutely hideous. And this is being called beauty by the diabolical narcissist beta class, taking their marching orders from above. Even though they're unable to self-generate a defense or explanation of their acquired aesthetic, they hold it as dogma and defend it as such. This is another example of this. Years ago, when I still had Netflix, I was watching documentaries. I'd watch documentary after documentary on Netflix. And I came across two documentaries about fashion designers, and of course, homosexuals. The first one was about Valentino, and the second one was about Yves Saint Laurent. Okay, so the first one, Valentino, you see that Valentino has this sodomite sex partner who is also his business partner and runs the business, a man named Giancarlo Giammetti. Okay? And what you see is that in the fitting area, when they are in the process of designing the collections, the girl would walk in and have some rough draft of a garment on. And Valentino, who is the brand, the face, he's the one who is thought to be the driving force, the creative force behind all this. It's no such thing. Valentino is sitting there next to his dominant homosexual alpha business partner, Giancarlo Giammetti, and he's sitting there the whole time saying, do we like this? Is this good? Is the hem too high? Should we take the hem down? Is the ruffle too much? Do we like this? Is it good? Is it not? Can't make any move or decision by himself. Has to be told what he likes by the alpha homosexual business partner. It's exactly the same thing with Yves Saint Laurent. Yves Saint Laurent had a lifelong sodomite sex partner who also ran his business, a man named Pierre Berger, and would do exactly the same thing. Berger would be in the room, and Saint Laurent is constantly saying, is this good? Is this good? Was it too high? What do you think of the color? Do we change it? Do we not change it? Stunning. Stunning revelation. These people, Valentino, Saint Laurent, they can't make any of their own decisions. They have no taste in and of themselves. They have to be told by somebody else. Isn't that fascinating? So here's a picture. This is Valentino and Giammetti in one of these fitting rooms. In this image, Valentino is on the left and Giammetti is on the right with the silver hair. And here's a picture from the 60s. Saint Laurent is on the right on his knees, and Berger is standing on the left. There they are. Mass media and academia have destroyed and completely inverted all aesthetics presented to children. Show a child or teen today a Renaissance masterpiece or play Beethoven's Sixth, and they will wince and scream as if in pain. They genuinely hate beauty because they have all been conditioned to be this army of beta diabolical narcissists who are completely receptive to the commands and signals from the alpha psychopath class above them, who are inculcating them and turning them into these little narcissistic stormtroopers out to destroy the culture. In a culture full of diabolical narcissists, all that is required to invert an aesthetic is to plant a few alphas at the top who then plant the lie that ugly is beautiful. The beta diabolical narcissist population then takes up the mantra, enforces it, and spreads it. Now let's talk about education, academia, young people in general today. Hey, have you ever asked yourself, why are my kids or grandkids insufferable, godless totalitarians? Is that happening to any of you out there? Are any of your kids or grandkids manifesting as these social justice warriors? Why is this happening? Back to the 45 declared goals of communism. Number 17, get control of the schools. Use them as transmission belts for socialism and current communist propaganda. Soften the curriculum. Get control of teachers' associations. Put the party line in textbooks. Point number 18, gain control of all student newspapers. That today, that's the internet and media and so forth. And point number 41, emphasize the need to raise children away from the negative influence of parents. Attribute prejudices, mental blocks, and retarding of children to suppressive influence of parents. The reason why your children are monsters is because you sent them off. Your treasure, you handed them to monsters, Marxist monsters, because you were too lazy to take responsibility for their education yourself. It was just easier. They are this way because you failed them. Make no mistake. All education systems in the West today are designed to create diabolical narcissists. That's the point of the public schools. Heck, that's the point now of the Catholic schools, because they're all infiltrated and being run by these diabolical narcissist lesbian nun cadres and so forth. Convince the child that he is completely unique and never wrong, and that his precious little feelings are the center of the universe. Once a child is deified, remember we talked about that at the very beginning of the presentation. Once a child is deified and diabolically narcissistic, he is integrated into the bureaucratic beta strata in the culture and given his marching orders as a social justice warrior. That's what schools are today. They are factories to produce diabolical narcissists. Diabolical narcissists are also attracted to education because they enjoy breaking students. I can remember off the top of my head, two. There was one in the elementary school that I was in, and she had it in for boys. Boys would come through a year in her classroom and they'd just be broken. And then there was another one when I was in junior high, and she was clearly a lesbian. Now you look back in retrospect and you didn't kind of realize it, but she just hated everybody and just luxuriated in hurting kids and breaking them. She was cruel. So we've probably all heard people say things like, Peter was a great kid and loved school until he spent a year in Miss So-and-so's class, or Rob never recovered from the tormenting he took from Coach D, like middle school PE coaches who were just diabolical and would luxuriate in just trying to crush the souls of the kids that they had. You always ask the question, good grief, if you hate children and you don't like being around children, why would you become a teacher? Because you're a diabolical narcissist and you enjoy hurting people, and kids are easy targets. I mean, there's not much more of a target-rich environment than being shut alone in a room with 15 kids, or 20 kids all day long, and you just have carte blanche to do whatever you want to them. And you have a teachers union behind you, which is populated also with diabolical narcissists, who will make sure that you never get fired. You can be the most horrible person in the world and all the kids can hate you, and you can be breaking kids right and left. You'll never get fired. Let's talk about Marxism and liberalism. What these things are political diabolical narcissism, the dethroning of God and the deification of man. Does this sound familiar at all? Humanism. It's just another word for diabolical narcissism. All for man. That was the slogan of the Soviet Union. All for man turns into all for me. Okay? That's a quick jump to make. Diabolical narcissists can be created by mental torture, and many Marxists have done this. A great example is the Nazis. The way the Nazis would create armies of diabolical narcissists out of completely normal adult men is they would have a squad that they wanted to, for example, send to the camps, the extermination camps, and you need to have men that will just do absolutely anything in order to man those camps. So they would have the men together as a unit, and they would give them as a mascot for the unit a German Shepherd dog. German Shepherd, smart dog, likable dog. They'd all become attached to the dog. The dog would be allowed to be in the barracks and be around. And as soon as the entire squad was genuinely attached to this German Shepherd dog, they would call them out onto the parade grounds. They would all line them out in formation there so that they could see, and then they would take the dog up onto the dais and they would torture the dog to death in front of the men. And the men would be horrified, and some of them might even cry as it went on and on, as they stood there and were forced to watch this dog that they had grown to love and become attached to being tortured to death brutally in front of them. And then when the dog was dead and it was over, everybody would go back and they'd wait a while, and then they'd give them another German Shepherd dog. And they'd wait until they were attached, and they would go back out onto the parade ground, and they would torture the dog to death in front of them, and they would observe. And a lot of them this time around were affected, but less affected. And the interesting thing about all this, they do it a third time. They just keep going and going and cycling through this until the men didn't react anymore. Then they knew that they had descended into diabolical narcissism. Here's the interesting thing about this. So the men purged love from their hearts by having it, forcibly taken out of them by this torture of the dog thing. Every time they would get a new dog, though, they would still engage the dog and be what appeared to be affectionate with the dog. They would still engage the dog. They wouldn't refuse to deal with it. That wasn't what happened. They would still engage with the dog. It's just that when it came time to torture the dog to death in front of them, they didn't care. That's it. That's it right there. Let's talk about feminism. Feminism is a subset of Marxism. Feminism seeks to make all women into diabolical narcissists. Now, in normal times, if there's any such thing, in a normal time, in a normal culture, there tend to be far, far more male diabolical narcissists than female. They think it's about 80-20 in normal times. What feminism wants to do is make sure that they're creating as many female diabolical narcissists as possible. Feminism is all about purging women of love. Purging women of love is critical to the overthrow of a culture. Feminism deifies women, the goddess, purges them of love of men as beneath them, men as inferior beings, right? And teaches them to purge all love and to even actively hate, resent, be envious of, and fear husbands and then their children. That's what feminism is all about. purging women of love of their husbands and their children. Very successful they've been. As women descend into diabolical narcissism, experiencing only anger, hatred, jealousy, and fear, they also descend into sexual perversion. This is why lesbianism is rampant among the alpha feminist caste. So, you look at these hyper-militant, aggressive feminist nuns and other feminists in society. Most of them are homosexual or bisexual or just a barosexual in some way. A lot of them are de facto cross-dressers, male to female, even though they hate men. Most Catholic nuns today are diabolical narcissist feminists and lesbians. Remember, even if they are chaste, even if they're not actually engaging in any sodomitical sex acts, these lesbian nuns, the same-sex attraction is a derivative of diabolical narcissism, and diabolical narcissism is the greater reality. These women should not be nuns. They should not be permitted anywhere near the religious life. Look at the damage that they've done. Look at the damage that they've done. Feminism paints sexual promiscuity as a sign of strength. The quote-unquote power bitch, aka the female sociopath, is utterly self-concerned, devoid of love, devoid of empathy, and is presented by feminists as the ideal woman. Let's talk about Islam. A totalitarian political system masquerading as a religion designed to purge humanity of all non-diabolical narcissists. The percentage of people in the Islamic milieu that are diabolical narcissists is the highest percentage of any population or group in the world, because that is what Islam is specifically designed to create. Classic alpha beta societal structure with the most advanced enforcement application. So this is why liberals and Marxists have a strong affinity for Islam. Islam is what they aspire to. They aspire to people who will murder at the drop of a hat in order to defend the party line. So you have this caste of alphas at the top of Islam shooting out the directives and the fatwas, and then a massive beta caste of diabolical narcissists. Again, why? Because so many of them have been sexually abused as children, male and female. This army, and that's what it is, this jihadist army, every single one of them is part of this narcissistic beta caste that's being tasked with overthrowing and overrunning the entire world. That's why all of these attacks, that's why this war that we are now in with the invasion of Europe and the terrorist attacks executed by Muslims all over the world in the Western world, it's all being done by civilians, because that is the army, okay? These days of having uniform military, that's all over. That's a joke, okay? Civilians who are doing all this because they're part of that beta caste, which is endemic to Islam. Oh, and there's Rage Boy. There he is. Musloids, being diabolical narcissists, are loveless and animated by anger, hatred, jealousy, and fear. And also, because they are diabolical narcissists, it is a culture of utter mendacity. Everything is about lying. These people lie. You can't trust anything they say, including and the. Everything is a lie in Islamic culture. I read an anecdote not too long ago about a young American soldier who was over somewhere. I don't know if it was Afghanistan or something. And this young man, just despairing of all this, being told that he was there to help these people and we're going to help build their culture and so forth. And he said to his immediate superior, "Sir," and he looked out over the city and he said, "Sir, this shit is effed up." And that's exactly right. The entire culture, it's an entire culture of diabolical narcissists. I mean, that's a mild way to put it. You can't fix that. You can't fix that without an enormous, enormous war or supernatural intervention. Islamic culture is perhaps the most sexually perverted and depraved culture in the world. Sexual abuse of children of both sexes is intrinsic to Islam because childhood sexual abuse is the surest way to make a child into a diabolical narcissist who will then be ready to expand the beta stratum. Other diabolically narcissistic paradigms of note, I could do presentations on each one of these by themselves. Freemasonry, the deification of man, again, a paradigm which basically wants to create an entire world of diabolical narcissists. Talmudic Judaism, Kabbalah, objectivism, hello, Ayn Rand, durr. I mean, she's completely explicit about it. Was it rational self-interest? No altruism? It's all about diabolical narcissism. And she was also kind of a sex pervert herself. She was what a character. I've read Rand, and I will not deny that Rand has value in the sense that she was an eyewitness to the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, and she was able to write and say, if there is a communist takeover and a communist revolution in the United States, this is what you can expect it to look like. And that information is extremely invaluable. Very, very valuable, good information. Her other stuff is just diabolical narcissism. How about Americanism? Putting the state above God. Okay, think about what the roots of all this are. Luciferian, revolt against God. There it is. I'm sorry to tell you all that, but putting the state separate and then above God, that is a diabolical narcissist paradigm. Protestantism, hello, Luther, Henry VIII, textbook diabolical narcissist. Superfun rock band church. Superfun rock band church is just, liturgical diabolical narcissism. It's all about us. Me, 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 me. Let's deify me. Let's talk about me. But, enough about that. Let's talk about me. The Joel Osteen prosperity cults, diabolical narcissism. The cult of Oprah. The cult of Oprah is clear-cut narcissism. And, of course, Scientology. Just insane diabolical narcissism. Diabolical narcissism in media and entertainment, specifically pornography and obscenity. Let's go back to the 45 stated goals of communism. And again, just making sure everybody remembers that communism is, of course, a subset of Marxism, and communism is often described as the most perfectly diabolically narcissistic of all of the various forms of Marxism. So here we go. Number 24 in the list of goals. Eliminate all laws governing obscenity by calling them censorship and a violation of free speech and free press. Number 25, break down cultural standards of morality by promoting pornography and obscenity in books, magazines, motion pictures, radio, and TV. And number 26, present homosexuality, degeneracy, and promiscuity as, quote, normal, natural, and healthy. Mission accomplished, I would say. Your children are all now absolutely convinced not only that sodomy is every bit as good and normal as heterosexual conjugal embraces, it's now getting to the point where your children are crossing the line into thinking that, hey, maybe sodomy is better. Maybe being gay is actually better than being straight. Again, it's all part of the communist infiltration of the United States over the last century, but really put into effect since the middle of the 20th century, all rooted in diabolical narcissism. Diabolical narcissism in media and entertainment. The glorification and normalization of diabolical narcissism is the new trendy it thing in entertainment. The new trend is for psychopathic criminals, politicians to be the protagonist, to be the protagonist in these television shows. I don't watch television anymore, and this is, I'm glad I stopped. I stopped in 2009, but I know about these television shows, and diabolical narcissists love these television shows because they love to see people who are like them, who are incapable of love and who are mendacious liars and only experience anger, hatred, jealousy, and fear. They're overjoyed in the only way that a diabolical narcissist could be. I should say he's diabolically satisfied to be able to watch people like him on television presented as the hero. So shows like The Sopranos, House of Cards, The Americans, these shows are all part of this business of trying to normalize this and in fact make these people seem even in a sense heroic. Another trend that I've noticed in entertainment is what I refer to as 9/11 porn. Massive death and destruction being shown as not important. Just complete lack of empathy. A great example of this is there was a Superman movie. I mean, there's been a lot of Superman movies late, but within the last 3 years or so, there was a Superman movie, and Superman battles the bad guys in a city that is obviously supposed to be emblematic of New York City, and there's just massive destruction. You know, skyscraper after skyscraper after skyscraper destroyed, just destroyed. And it's all very reminiscent of 9/11, except the entire, as if the entire island of Manhattan was just destroyed like that. And at the very, very end, the last scene of the movie, there's Superman and, what's her name, Lois Lane, standing there with this city just destroyed and burning in the background. And you look at this and hundreds of thousands of people are dead, clearly dead. And this is the end of the movie, and Superman and Lois Lane are standing there looking at each other with googly eyes. And the end of the movie is them embracing and kissing, very happy, very content, not at all bothered by the fact that hundreds of thousands of people have just been killed. It's that kind of lack of empathy, that kind of sick, diabolical narcissism that's being put forth. And look at who it is. It's Superman. I mean, right? Is there anything more emblematic than Superman? And here he is being presented as completely devoid of empathy. Beware the 9/11 porn. Just can't even go to movies anymore. Diabolical narcissism in media and entertainment. In the black hip-hop culture and in the male sodomite culture in particular, calling people bitch, which used to have a negative connotation meaning ruthless, uncaring, cruel, is now a term of endearment. It's a subtle thing, but it's something that I clearly noticed. You know, homosexual men calling each other bitch and black people saying, damn bitch, you crazy. But it's like a term of endearment. This is all a function of diabolical narcissism, glorifying the fact that people do not feel empathy for other people. The black hip-hop culture, again, we've already covered this, is the classic beta diabolical narcissist case, which mindlessly adopts as dogma anything its leaders tell it, and no criticism whatsoever of the alpha diabolical narcissist case is tolerated. So, you know, Barack Obama still has a 104% approval rating among the black community. You know, anything happens, you know, Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, any of these people are exposed. I mean, not long ago, Jesse Jackson was exposed as being bisexual. Nobody cares. Nobody cares if Jesse Jackson's bisexual. Everything is explained away. Oh, it's all a conspiracy. He was set up, blah, blah. Completely mindless support, bureaucratic support of the alpha case above. Let's talk about finance and big pharma. Remember, diabolical narcissists view other human beings as nothing more than three-dimensional cartoons. Theft, graft, embezzlement, price gouging, leveraging of human life, which is usury, in order to enrich themselves, has no moral meaning to them whatsoever. They simply do not care about the damage they are doing to others and even derive diabolical satisfaction from the exercise of their totally unchecked power. They don't care that they're hurting people, and they get off on the fact that nobody's doing anything about it. They know they're committing crimes. They know what they're doing is right and wrong. Like I said, remember, these people know the difference between right and wrong. They get off on the fact that they're able to get away with this stuff. And let's talk about the Catholic Church. Diabolical narcissists have been almost exclusively recruited into the church, the priesthood, and women religious for the past 50 years. 50 years. What also happened 50 years ago? Oh, that's right. The Second Vatican Council, that failed ecumenical council, and also the promulgation of the Novus Ordo Mass. Funny how those two things just coincidentally line up. The Novus Ordo paradigm is a cancer of diabolical narcissism in the body of Christ, the church. There will be no recovery. There will be no recovery of the church. There will be no civilizational recovery unless and until the Novus Ordo is exterminated. It was conceived in malice. It is a vector of diabolical narcissism. It's what it's all about. God, who's that? Holy sacrifice of Calvary, what are you talking about? Real presence of Jesus Christ in the Eucharist. Oh, you don't actually believe that, do you? No, this is all about us gathering around a table. And I will be your host, Father Jazz Hands, as I put on my show for you. Look at me. It's all about me. It's my mass, it's my church, it's my parish. Me. Can you see me? Can everybody see me? Can you see my face? Diabolical narcissism. I am convinced that unworthy, sacrilegious reception of Holy Communion is one of the main drivers of the spread of diabolical narcissism in the post-Christian West in the last 50 years. Say, well, why is this happening? You got these churches full of people and they all go up and they get communion. Yeah, but they're all contracepting. Many of them are in mortal sin. Nobody's hearing any confessions anymore. Nobody goes to confession anymore. And everybody goes up and everybody receives our blessed Lord and Savior Jesus Christ physically and substantially present in the Eucharist. If you receive the Eucharist unworthily, it doesn't help you, it hurts you. St. Paul makes that very, very clear. Unworthy reception, failure to discern the body and blood. It's going to do damage. I'm convinced that one of those forms of damage is the fact that this diabolical narcissism is spread. And I have a supporting anecdote. I heard a story about in France, during the Revolution, that Voltaire told a young man who was struggling he wanted to lose his faith. He didn't want to believe in God, in the church, in the Mass, in the Eucharist. He wanted to lose his faith, but it just kept nagging on him and he couldn't quite shake it. And he was told by Voltaire, here's what you do. Keep going to Mass. Go to Mass as frequently as you can, but make sure you commit as many mortal sins as you can before going to Mass. Make sure that you receive the Eucharist in a state of mortal sin, and you will hate God and you will lose your faith. Isn't that interesting? He didn't tell him to stop going to Mass. He told him to go to Mass and receive the Eucharist in mortal sin. That will make you hate God. And that will make you lose your faith. And the young man did it and came back and reported, worked like a charm. I hate God. I've lost my faith. The church needs to be destroyed. There you go. Now, in terms of today, given this premise, is it any surprise that the diabolical narcissist in the church, first among them Jorge Bergoglio, Pope Francis, are pushing for Eucharistic sacrilege, pushing and pushing and pushing to get people receiving the Eucharist in states of unrepentant mortal sin. That's what all of this is about. That's what all of this is about. Creating more diabolical narcissism and more diabolical narcissism. Jorge Bergoglio, as far as I can see, gives every indication of being a textbook diabolical narcissist. His delusions of grandiosity. He considers himself, he's been saying since the beginning, that he is completely unique. I am the only one who is humble enough. He is authoritarian. He is a thug. We've talked about that already as a Peronist fascist. He is vindictive. He is petty. He is prone to rage. He has engaged in gaslighting of faithful Catholics, and he possibly, I don't know, but he might possibly be actually at war with God himself. It will be interesting to see at the general judgment when all is revealed. Many clergy today are diabolical narcissists who initially became priests because they believed God was their only worthy peer. And, you know, we too. I'm the only one who could possibly understand this. I will sit at your right hand and we will rule together. They then became disillusioned when they failed, when the world failed to acknowledge them as co-God, and they then, like diabolical narcissists do with other human beings, diabolical narcissists who attach themselves to God will then turn on God, devalue God, and then unleash their diabolical narcissistic rage on God and his church. Does this sound familiar? Doesn't this sound almost exactly like Lucifer? And we have the Archangel Michael, and his name means who is like God. The Archangel Michael understands that nobody is like God. Lucifer basically wanted to be co-God and refused to adore God incarnate, raged, devalued God, unleashed his rage upon him, and has been at war with him ever since. This is almost exactly what these clergy are doing. It always mystified me. Why in the world would you become a priest if you didn't believe any of it? And some of these people clearly hate God. Why would you become a priest? Why would you dedicate your life to this? Can you generate the answer? We've covered it before already. It's spite. It's pure spite. They're diabolical narcissists. That's what drives them. Anger, hatred, jealousy, and fear, and just at war with God out of pure spite. These people remain inside the church, resolved to do as much damage to souls as they can and to the church institutionally, to destroy the church from the inside out of pure spite. Some of them are communist plants. Many, but not all, are sexually perverted. And some of them are literal, actual Satanists who engage in black masses and black liturgies and so forth. That is real. That is absolutely real. Those people exist. Again, back to the 45 stated goals of communism. Number 27, infiltrate the churches and replace revealed religion with quote-unquote social religion. Does this sound familiar? This is textbook Bergoglio. Discredit the Bible and emphasize the need for intellectual maturity, which does not need a, quote, religious crutch. Again, that's 45 stated goals of communism, number 27, communism being one of the most perfect manifestations, along with Islam, of diabolical narcissism. It's the most perfect manifestation of it within the Marxist category. The College of Cardinals and even the College of Bishops are today a perfect microcosm of an alpha-beta diabolical narcissist paradigm. Why isn't anybody saying anything? Why has nothing been done? Why were none of these abuses, none of this has been called out? No one will say anything over the last 50 years to correct any of this. Why? It's the alpha-beta caste. They attach to a psychopath likely above them, and then they will brook no criticism of that which is above them. They want to maintain the connections. They want to maintain the career path. They want to keep being invited to the parties. They want to stay in everybody's good graces. That's all they care about. Diabolical narcissism. Now, you may be thinking, okay, Ann, not all people on the planet are going to become full-blown diabolical narcissists. This is absolutely true. Satan does, in fact, have a plan for all of the rest of humanity. And that is the vice which all people can fall into. That is the most similar to diabolical narcissism. Can you guess what it is? What is the vice that is the most similar to diabolical narcissism? It's rampant throughout this culture. Rampant. The answer is effeminacy. Effeminacy, remember, is not homosexuality. It's not femininity. Femininity is an intrinsically good thing in women. Effeminacy is a vice, and it transcends gender. It is a vice against perseverance. Softness is how St. Thomas describes it, softness. Its opposite, this might help clarify, the opposite of effeminacy is virility, which again transcends gender. It's not exclusive to men. In fact, our Lord told St. Catherine of Siena, I believe, that she needed to develop virilitas, okay? And she did, and that's why she yelled at popes. Effeminacy manifests as, in no particular order, a pathological refusal to deal with objective reality, intense normalcy bias, self-delusion, hatred of exertion, an intense aversion to helping others. Oh, we've talked about that before. That sounds familiar, because helping almost always involves exertion. The refusal to voluntarily take on any hardship, discomfort, or suffering. Lashing out at virile people as a defense mechanism. The need for human respect. Hypersensitivity, easily triggered. Intense judgmentalism and hypercriticality. Inordinate attachment to money, tight-fistedness, stinginess, intense selfishness and self-absorption, incessant criticizing and complaining while refusing to act or charitably instruct others, shunning personal responsibility, most especially taking responsibility for the actions of others or for no-fault accidents. Does that sound familiar? It lines up really close. So people don't have to become full-blown diabolical narcissists who are incapable of love and have purged all love out of their hearts. You can be a person who's still capable of love, but who suffers mightily from the vice of effeminacy. And you're kind of lined up with the agenda. And I dare say that Satan is perfectly pleased to have a significant portion of the population fall under this category of effeminacy. This is why nothing's being done. You know, the United States has been overthrown. The constitutional republic no longer exists. No one will do anything. No one will lift a finger. So what do we do? An extremely high percentage of people in Musloid cultures are diabolical narcissists. Small-scale targeting of only alpha kingpins will not solve the problem. It won't solve the problem in the Muslim milieu. It won't solve the problem in the contemporary American political milieu. It won't solve the problem in the church. It all just, diabolical narcissism is just, its tendrils are just down and penetrating everything. You can't just take out a few kingpins and think the entire paradigm is going to change, because it involves an enormous number of people. Well, first, the bad news. Since this is a supernatural problem, for a diabolical narcissist to be fully cured is literally a miracle. It's a miracle. It almost never happens. This is why stories about reformed diabolical narcissists are so compelling. The most compelling of this is A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, the story of Ebenezer Scrooge. This is being recorded on the 9th of January, 2016, so just coming off of Christmas, rewatching the 1951 version of Scrooge with Alastair Sim. Fascinating. It's available on YouTube. Look this up. You can see the moment when Scrooge purges all love from his heart and becomes a diabolical narcissist. It's when his sister Fan dies. She dies, or it turns out he thought she died, she had just passed out, but that she died shortly thereafter. And he stands up and he walks away from her bed, and his face transforms into this loveless, rock-hard countenance. And then the infant child, she died in childbirth, the infant child cries, and he turns in rage and anger, looking at the infant child, and then storms out of the room. Then you see the story of him descending into diabolical narcissism, living a life of diabolical narcissism as a very successful usurer, actually, in London, a lender. And the whole thing, the whole movie, is showing the miraculous, supernatural curing of the diabolical narcissism of Ebenezer Scrooge. It's a miracle. That's why the story is so compelling. These people almost never turn around in real life, and certainly contemporary psychology has no effect on this at all. In fact, there's very little research done on this, and the psychological community really has no interest in engaging this or engaging diabolical narcissists, because when they go to therapy, quote unquote, they never make any progress, and many of them lie. You know, they're playing cat and mouse games with the therapist. They don't believe there's anything wrong with them. They have no desire to change. And so they are extremely frustrating because of their mendacity and the fact that they never improve and never make any strides forward in any way. And so the psychological academic community has no interest in researching this at all. Like I said, conventional psychology has no effect, and in fact, mood-altering drugs, talking about psychiatry, mood-altering drugs make diabolical narcissists even worse. It turns them into even worse rage monsters. So there's nothing out there right now that helps this in any way in the mainstream psychological paradigm. Even though diabolical narcissists are not possessed, their condition is connected to the demonic realm. Exorcists need to be tasked, I think, with addressing this problem. And, you know, hopefully as this goes out on the internet and people see this, obviously I can't do this, but if there are any people out there who are involved or know exorcists, this needs attention. Surely there must be something that can be done. Prayers of liberation. I don't even know. I have no expertise in this whatsoever. But the exorcist community needs to get involved with this question of diabolical narcissists. According to Vaknin, going back to him, extreme trauma can sometimes break, quote unquote, a diabolical narcissist. He claims that's what happened to him. He says he's still a diabolical narcissist and a psychopath, but that he became more self-aware when he was arrested and put in prison. Given how widespread diabolical narcissism is now in today's culture, it's terrifying to think of how extreme a trauma will be needed to reform an entire civilization. Because that's what we're talking about here. Something is going to have to happen that is so bad and so traumatic that even the diabolical narcissists are shaken by it. This is a terrifying thing to think about, because this implies just catastrophic war and likely civilizational collapse. The alpha caste in Washington, the Vatican, etc., are not the entire problem, and replacing them will not solve the problem. The bigger problem, like I've said, is the beta diabolical narcissist bureaucracy class, for lack of a better word. An extremely high percentage of people in Musloid cultures are diabolical narcissists. Small-scale targeting of only alpha kingpins will not solve the problem. Rampant worldwide diabolical narcissism was foretold by our Lord in the Gospels. Matthew 24:12, and because iniquity hath abounded, the charity of many shall grow cold. What does that mean? The charity of many will grow cold. People will be incapable of love. They will purge all love out of their hearts. And Luke 18:8, the Son of Man, when he cometh, shall he find, think you, faith on earth? Mass apostasy, which implies mass diabolical narcissism. Those who know about and understand diabolical narcissism and can recognize it when it enters their life and even attacks them personally have far better odds of surviving it and not becoming diabolical narcissists themselves. The key is discrediting diabolical narcissists. That's the key to everything, and that is why I am making this video. This is the entire motivation. If you know what this is, and it comes after you, you can look at a diabolical narcissist and say, exactly as you would look at a demon who manifested in front of you and started hissing at you how much it hated you. You would just look at it and say, I know what you are, and you can't hurt me. I know what you are, and you can't hurt me. Not anymore. Discovering that someone you love is a diabolical narcissist can cause scandal and disappointment so intense that a person will despair and even fall into the chasm of diabolical narcissism themselves as they purge themselves of love in order to eliminate the pain. Do not do this. Blessed are those who mourn. If you, after watching this, have just realized, oh my gosh, someone I love is probably a diabolical narcissist, and you're sitting there feeling intense, intense disappointment, it's okay. Mourn them. Mourn that person. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Do not fall into the vampiric trap of all of this, of then losing all love yourself and basically turning into the thing that just attacked you. Don't fall into that trap. Acknowledge what they are, namely bad people. Stay away. It's incredibly difficult. I mean, I so feel for people who realize one day that their spouse is a bad person, or they have a child who has grown up and become an adult, and they realize, my goodness, my child is a bad person. Friend, co-worker, anything. It's a bad person. It's incredibly disappointing. But you have to be virile, and you have to face it, and you have to deal with it. And then stay away. Stay away. If at all humanly possible, stay away. Especially if you are a specific target of a diabolical narcissist rage. If they have become fixated on you and you're a target, you have to stay away. They will never stop. They will never stop, and if they attempt to make amends, it is almost certainly a ploy to put you in a position to hurt you again, and it will be even harder the next time. This is the brutal truth. You have to deal with it. You have to face it for the good of your own soul. Is there hope for diabolical narcissists? It is possible to forgive someone and sever the relationship in this world. Scripture is replete with admonitions to sever or cut off relationships, okay? So don't fall for that. You can forgive someone and also say, I hope that we are reconciled in the next world. Pray for them unceasingly. Unceasingly. Most especially the rosary. Most especially the rosary. Pray the rosary, especially the sorrowful mysteries, it seems to me, and also the grace of a happy death. Oh, that's the fourth glorious, Our Lady's Assumption. grace of a happy death, that they make even an imperfect act of contrition on their deathbed, because God can work with anything. But why this presentation is titled the way it is you cannot look back. You cannot look back. Remember Lot's wife. They were told, get out of Sodom. Get out. What was Sodom? A city filled with diabolical narcissists, sodomites, homosexual gang rapists. Now, Lot's wife probably had a pretty good life in Sodom. It was a functioning city. She had liturgy. She had the best liturgy in the world because she was in Abraham's family. It is reasonable to think that she was probably happy or something like happy while she was in Sodom. And what did she do? They were told, get out of here and don't look back. And she looked back wistfully, looking back into that paradigm of diabolical narcissism that she had just been delivered from. And it got her. She was turned to a pillar of salt. Don't look back, don't look back, don't look back, for the good of your own soul. The best hope for diabolical narcissists is actually in their emotional capacity, in their emotional palette. What are the four? Anger, hatred, jealousy, and fear. Fear. That, their ability to fear, is the hope that they have. This is why it is essential to preach hell. It is essential to preach eternal damnation. Preach servile fear of the Lord. Imperfect contrition at death could be sufficient for even the most diabolical of diabolical narcissists. Do you now see why the infiltrators of the church, over the last 50 years especially, have effectively quashed all mention of hell and servile fear of the Lord? It's diabolical, because that is the last hope. That is the last hope of all of mankind, and especially of diabolical narcissists. That's their life raft that they have. That capacity to fear. If nobody preaches hell, nobody preaches fear of the Lord. Will they even make an act of imperfect contrition on their deathbed? The answer is probably no, because they'll probably die not even believing. They'll probably die believing in soul annihilation, like what Jorge Bergoglio, Pope Francis, that's what he tells people in interviews. Oh no, if you don't make it to the beatific vision, your soul is just annihilated and that's the end of it. Well, why would a diabolical narcissist on their deathbed make an even imperfect act of contrition if all they think it's going to be is lights out? They won't. It's diabolical. Diabolical narcissists who are saved will likely have a very long stay in purgatory, as their souls are completely woven through with this detritus. There's absolutely nothing superficial about this pathology. It is utterly pervasive in a soul. An example, a visual to kind of to make you understand this, is it's like tweed, the fabric tweed. If you look at tweed fabric, it's a weave of very, very dark threads and very, very light threads. So that's like the diabolical narcissist soul. And what has to happen is all of the dark threads have to be pulled out of the weave, which is the person, which is their soul, leaving only the light threads. That's going to take a long time. That's a very, very intensive act of purgation, burning this out of somebody's soul because it completely pervades their soul. But if you make it to purgatory, you're absolutely guaranteed that you will see the beatific vision. Might take a while, but that means you're going to make it. That means you're going to make it. But there has to be some sort of contrition. But all things are possible through Jesus Christ. So even diabolical narcissists can possibly be saved and then fully purgated, and then achieve the beatific vision. It's tough, but all things are possible through Christ. Diabolical narcissism is the overarching dynamic driving evil in the world. Ephesians 6:11 and 12, put you on the armor of God that you may be able to stand against the deceits of the devil. For our wrestling is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and power, against the rulers of the world of this darkness. This is what this scripture is talking about. Principalities and powers is referring to different classifications of, in this case, fallen angels. That's what we're struggling against. So you've got the supernatural Satan and the demons in the background driving all of this and encouraging all of this in human beings, who then take on the traits of demons and then go out and attack other human beings as mercenaries, effectively. This is the overarching dynamic of evil in the world. Scapegoating one group, such as the Jews, for example, they're the most common, keeps people from seeing the big picture, this supernatural, demonic drive in all of this, and even falling into diabolical narcissism themselves in other groups. It's a massive tactical blunder. You're in way too close if you're trying to blame all evil in the world on just one group of people. And I don't think it's appropriate to, I get very, very impatient when people start talking about vilifying other people based upon their DNA sequencing. That's just ridiculous. That makes no sense. Let's talk about their actions, political schemes that they subscribe to, their culture, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Don't talk to me about the fact that they have a DNA sequence of this, and this. If man is not free to choose evil that he does, neither is he free to choose the good. Okay? And the Jews are called to conversion, and God desires their conversion and that they be saved every bit as much as anyone else. I get very impatient about that. But it would apply to anything. If you get in too close to something, I could do it. If I were to get in too close and say all evil in the world is caused by Islam, well, that's clearly not true. I'm not seeing the big picture. What's driving Islam? This diabolical narcissism, who's driving that? It's the supernatural behind all of that. You can go on and on and on. Pull your focus back and truly see the big picture, the supernatural picture in all this. People freely choosing to adopt the demonic psychospiritual posture and emotional palette and thus becoming hell's mercenaries are everywhere on earth across every culture. Okay, so we clearly need a wider focus here. My prayer is that this presentation helps one person not be spiritually destroyed by a diabolical narcissist. And that one diabolical narcissist, I have no idea who, anywhere on earth, if one diabolical narcissist is saved through prayer and joined as a result of someone watching this video, then everything, all of it, will have been worth it. Everything. Thank you over the years for watching all my videos and listening to me. In terms of video, I now literally don't have anything more to say. I will continue to write. I may do occasional audio interviews, but this is the last video. Be assured of my continued prayers. Your prayers have brought me through to be standing right here. The masses and the divine liturgies that you all have had offered for me, I'm convinced it's why I'm standing here right now. Be assured of my continued prayers for all of you as we move forward into these extraordinarily dark days. I would like to finish with the St. Michael prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. St. Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all evil spirits who prowl throughout the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. Virgo potens, ora pro nobis.